The next speaker made it just in time.
Nice to see you after a long time. I'll catch up.
Dr. Amita Joshi, I've known her from the time when she was Dr. Amita Katoch, and the day she got married was celebrated as, or mourned the day she got married by all the guys in JJ Hospital, you know. She's the associate professor in Grand Medical College and has done a lot of work in TB. Under her leadership in the department, she got NABL accreditation for the entire scope of TB work. This is the first government hospital laboratory to have accredited for the entire scope, that is including LPA and other tests. So today she's going to talk about new concepts in drug resistance in TB. Dr. Amita.
Now it is in the...
Thanks, Sanjay. 1 minute, I hope I... Where do I point this? TB is important not only for microbiologists, but you also as pathologists, because I think majority of you all are pathologists. There are a few biochemists also around over here. But collectively, we are all responsible for diagnosis. And it is something we Indians cannot ignore because we are the leading country. Nearly 44% of TB cases all over India are in, all over the world are in India. And we are the second largest as far as MDR TB is concerned. Lots of laboratories have also diagnosed XDR TB, and therefore it is a problem whether it is TB or where resistance is concerned. A large number of people die of an infection, which we feel sad about because it is something which is completely within our hand. If you go to look, it is not like the other bacteria, because we all know following infection, there is something like a latent infection in this. And unlike other bacteria where the resistance gets transferred, in this case, it is not so. Okay? So we have resistance that occurs only through the chromosomal mutations in this case. And the mutation rate varies. It is unique. If you look at a lesion per se, within that you'll get population which are sensitive and population which are resistant. And therefore, when we do also culture, at times we say maybe the population picked up is a sensitive and not a resistant. And what is the probability rate is given by this equation. There are equation rates for many other things. What is the chance that I will get monoresistance? What is the chance that I will get monoresistance during or following treatment? What is the probability if I do one drug, two drug, or a multi-drug combination? And similarly, the spontaneous mutation rates for individual in the first line have been well characterized. Of all the drugs, if you go to see whether first line, second line, we are more interested, even though so many years have passed, on the first line, mainly because we have two very good effective bactericidal drug, rifampicin and isoniazid. And given the choice to any clinician, if the laboratory, or if he thinks that this is a sensitive strain, he will prefer to use these effective bactericidal and sterilizing. And that is what we as a laboratory try to do and see whether it's a sensitive strain so that he can give him on the first line treatment. Okay? It is something unique as compared to other bacteria because we know with other bacteria, the doctors usually go to the high-end antibiotics, but which is not so in TB. They prefer to go for the first line, which is the HREZ therapy that we are using. Whenever there is a wild strain, because I said it undergoes spontaneous mutation within that population, we get what is known as a drug-resistant strain. And this either because the clinician has given a poor combination, that is what we say, a poor choice of drugs, or because the quality of the drugs by itself was bad, or the patient itself was not compliant enough to take whatever was given to him, we land up with a drug resistance. And if this is not detected early, or it is not controlled early, we know we are increasing the risk of this individual transmitting it around him, not only the sensitive, but also the resistant strains. We have various tests. In the government setup, at least we have the luxury of using all because there is no cost to that effect. But in the private sector, where money comes into the picture, so if the clinician asks for A test, we as a laboratory will give only the A test, because if I am going to do something else to come to that A test, it is going to cost. And hence, in TB, it is very important that the laboratory and the clinician go hand in hand, have a good dialogue, because there may be more than a single test which will give you the right diagnostic algorithm which is over there. So whatever be the test, even if it comes to me for a, say, gene expert, I will at least prefer to do a smear examination, right? If it comes to me for a culture, especially if it's an extrapulmonary, I would like to have a dialogue with the clinician. Can we do it for gene expert? Because there is an X amount. Because we know now that gene expert, especially for samples like CSF, pleural fluid, okay? And if it is pulmonary samples, which is smear positive, I would want to do a line probe assay. And we will see why I'm talking of these particular tests, though one lab, you see, will have gene expert, they will want to use that and all that, but I will compare all and I will tell you how you cannot do one without the other. The rules of the lab, if we understand this simple concept, no lab test is perfect. I think that is something, the first thing that we have to accept and make the clinician also understand, otherwise they will do lab hopping, we'll say. You know, if they see a report negative, they'll go to the next lab and all that, okay? So that is first important. Do not order a lab test if you're not ready to accept the results. Because many a time, the results may be contradictory to what you are. And in this case, if the patient is yet responding, we'll yet stick to that. We will not rely, and I'll tell you why I am talking with this statement also. And therefore, we say treat the patient, not the lab test. And that is what is there if you go to see even in the program or whether the clinician is doing it. He has to treat the patient. Only when he suspects, we say go in for a drug. Of course, now we are doing at the word go itself, whether it is an MDR case. But if there is a strong clinical suspicion, because there are some people who are slow responders, who may take 3 to 4 months. And in the second line, I don't have that effective lytic drugs that I have in the first line. So I'll prefer to give him an additional 4 months or a 5 months treatment before I go in for the continuation phase. Okay? And therefore, we say you treat the patient, not the lab test. For TB, there is a lot we yet do not understand, irrespective of whether I have a liquid, whether I have molecular, or whether I have a sequencer in my hand. There is a lot we do not understand. And if we go with this clear idea that I am going into a field where I know there is going to be a lot of debate, a lot of dialogue that is needed, then I think we are very clear that I am doing right as far as the patient is concerned. Since the topic was of very drug susceptibility, what do we have in our hand? We have the cumbersome test, which most of the private labs usually will not want to do. But if you see the clinician, they would like to have the entire panel in their hand, what we call as a phenotypic. And we know the pros and the cons of all these particular tests, and we have the genotypic. Now, problems in, let's go to the first one. What are the problems that we have when we think, yeah, I will start doing culture and then sensitivity, okay? Inoculums, all those labs who are doing this will understand what terminology I'm using. Standardization of the inoculum, the stability of the drugs. The same drug, when I'm using it in a solid, when I'm using it in a liquid, when I'm using even in the liquid in different companies' bottle, I am going to get a varied result, okay? Because we have worked with systems, not solid, we have worked with 2 different liquid systems, and we do have this problem. So this is something which you have to understand. There is going to be alteration of the drug in the different medium. The temperature and the time, if I'm doing a solid culture, because other machines have got automations in their temperature itself. What is the criteria of resistance? Am I doing an absolute? Am I doing an MIC? Am I doing a proportion method? Okay? So that all will differ or depend. Your result is going to depend. And therefore, one feels, if I have something which is much more easier to do, why should I go in for that? Right? If you go to see, when we are using phenotypic, WHO has given something which is known as critical concentration of the drug. And it has been defined both for solids as well as for liquids. For each, whether it's a first line or it's a second line, these critical concentrations have been decided, and normally as a lab we don't play with this because this is something standardized. Yes, there was a debate going on that for Indian scenario you need to change because many a times, especially for the second line, the MICs don't coordinate with the critical concentration what I'm going. But more or less, unless you have your own protocols, but this is what is standardized worldwide, and this is what most of the laboratories will do, whether they are doing a solid or whether they are doing a liquid. The only exception being for MOXIE, where we are using, and now what is advocated by WHO and most of the sites in India also, which have been authorized to do or which have been, accredited to do second line, moxicillin at 2 different concentration. And that also depends, unless you have a dialogue, is the patient on an Oflox, Ciplox, or MOXIE? Based on that, you will see whether you're doing both combination, higher combination, or individual drugs. So you have to go, and that's what the WHO has clearly said in the 2014 guidelines that it issued. Coming to the genotypic. In 2006, we were all happy because that was the time line probe assay came into the market, and it was in the Indian market, and in 2012, the GeneXpert machines came on. Following this, lot of article, I think one newspaper item also came, how one machine did not detect, it's bad, this bad, but let me tell you, each and every machine is good, provided we understand what we are looking in that particular machine. When we do molecular, it is based on the concept that there are certain genes which are controlling the mutation and therefore the resistance in that. And most of the commercial molecular kits, if you go to see, are based on detection of these genes. So if there is a wild type missing in this area, or if there is a mutation present, of corresponding mutation present, we go with the hypothesis that this is a resistant. Now remember, this is a gene. All genes need not have a phenotypic. Okay? And therefore we say, though there is a resistant, but if I seeing the patient, and many times when we say, my GeneXpert is not coinciding with my liquid culture, that may be the reason. The gene is there, but it might not have been expressed. And that is why phenotypically, I am yet getting a sensitive strain. Okay? So that is why we say it is not the lab is bad. We have to understand it's a gene. Mutation need not be with the phenotypic, this is there, okay? So these are the ones in the white are the first line drugs which we call, and below are the second line drugs where there are some, commercial kits available in the market, and I'll go into these ones. Coming to the first 2 drugs, which I said are the best lytic drugs I have, is rifampicin. And this 81 base pair is the area where mutation is looked for, either with my GeneXpert or with my line probe assay. Both of these look into this particular area. Okay? And within that, if you go to see 95 to 98% of resistance is in this particular area. That means I yet will have a range of 2 to 5%, which may be a mutation beyond this area. And therefore, my GeneXpert will not pick up, my line probe will not pick up. Okay? So that is where we say, if you are clinically yet suspecting, but it is coming as sensitive, do a phenotypic. That means grow it, and then you do your sensi, because it is only talking about the RPOB gene. Okay? It's not talking of beyond this RPOB gene. Okay? If you see in Indian scenario and even worldwide scenario, these two, 526 and 531 codons, are the areas where the maximum mutation takes place. And this 100% correlates with your phenotypic test. That means if I put even my sensi by the liquid, I will have a 100% correlation. That means if I have in 506, 7, 8, 9, or if I have beyond that, it will not be picked up that effectively with my liquid system. I think this clears up something which we have to be very well aware. Now, when we talk of mutations, there may be wild types which are absent. In addition, there will be the presence of mutation bands. Okay? GeneXpert only gives the absence of the wild type. It does not tell you any mutation present. So, if you go to CSR lab, I will prefer to have a line probe assay because I can also know where is the mutation. Okay? This is many times important because many a times the wild type is all present, but I yet have mutation bands. What we call as heteroresistance. Those people who have worked with a line probe assay will see all wild type present, but there are also mutation bands present, right? So maybe I will miss out in my gene expert, but I will pick it up in a line probe assay, right? So that is there. So when we say there is an absence of a wild type with the mutation, corresponding mutation band, we say this is a definite, what we say as mutation or an undisputed. But if it is absence with no mutant, we call it as an disputed mutation, or we say it is silent mutation. Silent mutation, if you actually go by the definition of silent mutation, means mutation took place, but there is no phenotypic expression. So to prove the phenotypic expression means I have to grow it and I have to show the characteristics of a resistance in this particular thing is there. Coming, that was with concerns to RIF. Coming to isoniazid. Now this is something which is not spoken about in the gene expert. So only those laboratories which are doing the line probe assay will get this additional information. Many labs says, I am happy with the gene expert, I don't want, okay, a line probe because I need to have a lab setup, because I need a slightly more technical expertise in that, and there are contaminations sometimes occurring because I'm processing the sample before I process it by the line probe assay. But believe me, when you have the capability of a molecular lab, you must have this additional feature because INHA resistance usually go hand in hand with ethionamide because the cycle of resistance is the same pathway that both of them are taking. In the case of isoniazid, just like I said, 98% mutation in RPOB for rifampicin. In the case of CATG, it ranges somewhere between 45 to 60%. And in the case of INHA, it ranges somewhere between 35 again to 40, 45%. That means mutations in this area. Now, ideally in the lab, when we get a presence of a mutation or an absence of a band, we just say isoniazid resistant. But I will further say that lab should mention whether it is a high level or low level. High level in the sense when the CATG, that means if there is a missing band and a mutation band present in the CAT gene, it's called as a high level. As opposed to that, if there is only in the INH area, we say it's a low level. Low level meaning, if you go to see, there are studies which say increase the dose of isoniazid and the patient will respond. Right? So why should I go do away with this very effective bactericidal drug when I can increase the isoniazid dosage and yet the patient can benefit with it. Now only these two are detected by your line probe assay. AFC and the NDH is not detected. So if you have to, you will have to resort for sequencing in this area. When in 2010, the Gene Expert came into the market, we already had. There were few takers for line probe because I said they wanted some civil structure, you wanted the pre-PCR, PCR, post-PCR so that contamination doesn't occur, training and all that. But the minute Gene Expert came, everybody, because even in the program setup, we hardly even keep a technician at the site. It is even a data entry operator who has just been taught how to tell the patient to collect the sample and put it into the machine, and it has given it. It was so useful, and if you read the Cochrane review, which came out in 2014, has endorsed this, that is a Gene Expert, in place. That means they said do away with microscopy and directly you go in for that. To come to that phase in the TB program will take little time, but those who can afford, instead of microscopy, go in. At least you can detect. Okay? And also for smear positive, culture positive, or even smear negative culture, this is there. In 2014, I think October, November, they also came out with a Cochrane review for extrapulmonary. And they have given it that a definite go for CSF, pleural fluid, lymph nodes, and lymph node aspirates. In these 4 samples, they say, especially if you have a little sample with you, process it by Gene Expert. Okay? And of course, if you have enough sample to play around, Gene Expert and culture. then you can, of course, do further more studies with it. This is there. For all other samples, urine, stool, for blood, they said no, you cannot. But at least for 4 of these samples, the Cochrane review has said, yes, go ahead with your gene expert. Line probe, it's not that. That means, okay, now this is so good, smear positive, smear negative, let me not go. But like I said, it gives you an additional of INHA and of your CAT-G for isoniazide. And many a times, what we do is, if we have the gene expert machine, we run it, and before we put up for a phenotypic DST, we put it up for the line probe assay, because I can give an additional information of isoniazide. It has the beauty of automation. So because I think most of the laboratories can afford the 4 module in the case of Gene Expert, but if you can do a little more automation where the line probe is concerned, you can run up to 240 to more number of samples. So if you actually see the turnaround time based on the load, a big load lab like us, which receives around 150 to 200 samples a day, because we drain the whole entire Western India. For us, Gene Expert is much more, you can say, faster as compared to your, line probe is much more faster as. What about second line? Now, second line drugs, I think in 2010-11, the government of India gave a ruling that only those labs which have been accredited, because the reason why this was not because it is high and mighty, but because to standardize the second line is itself a big issue. And therefore, only those labs which are regularly going the PT, passing the PT, and then only have been authenticated. There are 8 labs all over India. Ours is also one of the labs which is doing the second line DST, and that I'm talking of the liquid. So what about the molecular testing for second line? This advantage can be done only with those labs which already have a line probe in. That means you have the expertise, you already have the infrastructure. All you have to do is to get the kit and go around with it. Okay? Those up ones are there, and the lower ones come down from kanamycin onwards. If you go to see, the line probe assay, it says you can test for the quinolones and the injectable aminoglycosides. For quinolone, the kit which is in the market presently in Indian is the Gaire, and for the RRS is the one which is detected for injectable aminoglycosides. So if you see, not only kanamycin, but also Caprio has got that RRS, that means. So it can also be done for Caprio. So we say injectable aminoglycosides as well as this. But for strepto, we have a separator this. And like I said, INHA is for ethionamide. Also INHA, the cycle is, the pathway is the same. So if I have done the first line, and I have got INHA also as resistant, then I know I can clearly say that there are chances that he will be resistant also to the ethionamide, if that is the second line drug that the clinician is thinking about. If you look, Gaire A, and these are the genes which are there, the wild type and the corresponding mutation bands that you see in the second line DST when we are doing. The RRS for the injectable aminoglycosides, the wild type and the corresponding mutation band that we look for. What is this doing? This is a first-line drug, ethambutol, and if you speak to the company, they only said because there was area left over there, they put it ethambutol. Ethambutol, if you go to see, in this area, that means it is only around 45 to 50%. That means even if it is sensitive, I will have to do a phenotypic resistance, fine, but a sensitive, I will have to give this, I will want to confirm it by doing a phenotypic. The reason, this is a slide which is from Hinduja, courtesy Kamila Madam. The reason I put up this slide, there is a version 2 kit of second line, but the FDA India is, for whatever reason, the kit has not come into the Indian market. In that, the EMB, that is for ethambutol, has been removed, and you have the Gaire B. But if you go with the study, which is done over here, where they studied the pattern, Gaire B, they did not find. So it's not that we are missing out much, even if the version 2 kit is not there. We can yet do the second line with our line probe SL kits, which is over there. How reliable is this second line with the The first slide talks about when I'm doing the phenotypic, that is a liquid DST. And if you go to see even WHO, liquid DST by Midget, that is the only where the proportion and the drugs have been, that is the one which they are doing. And even in the national program of TB in India, it is by Midget, the second line, where the drug concentration that we are doing, and we are doing. For aminoglycosides, polypeptides, and fluoroquinolones, there is good interlab comparison. There is good repeatability within the lab. That means the standardization for this is good. But for other SLDs, it is not. And therefore, even when we are, as a lab, going through the the proficiency testing, it is only for kanamycins and the quinolones. It is not for the others, because for there is standardization. And if I repeat it, I get the same results. Between the labs also, there is concordance, okay? So that is there which we have to understand, and therefore, we do not do it for all. We do not do for Moxi, we do not do for the other quinolones or GATI or whatever. We are only restricting to ofloxacillin, and now they are introduced even moxifloxacillin. Otherwise, it is ofloxacillin and kanamycin for me to pass the proficiency, okay? Many a times, even the reports that are generated with the laboratory, however authentic the lab methodology may be, does not correlate clinically. And that is why we don't rely that much with the second-line DST, and that is why the clinicians prefers to have a good dialogue, pros, cons, see the bands, mutations, everything, before they think of changing the drugs which are of the second line that they have with them, okay? The diagnostic accuracy of second line. The Cochrane review, if you see, very clearly states that if you get resistance, whether it is for the quinolones or it is for the aminoglycosides, go ahead and give the report as resistance. But if you get it as sensitive, you have to put a disclaimer कि culture has been initiated and the phenotypic will be done to give you. So only for resistance, you can clearly say this is an XDR. But if it turns out sensitive, you need to do the individual second line DST, okay? So if once we know the limitations of the second line kit, I think we know where we stand as far as this is concerned. Then there is a lot about cross-resistance. That means if I have quinolone, does it go to all quinolones? Or if it is a aminoglycoside, does it mean all? That's what this next two slides. Between fluoroquinolones, it is more or less complete, okay? There is a limited evidence which suggests that the third generation quinolones, because Moxi and GATI are kept for those XDR patients where they have nothing, they are giving these two quinolones to them. They have enhanced clinical. Even if the lab gives a resistant report, clinically they are yet, because there is other thing only, because of their low MICs, because of the formulations which are there, because of the biochemicals which are there, they do respond, okay? And therefore we said the clinician may not change it, though you have given it, because he doesn't have also much options with him to give, especially when we know with Delamide is yet not given full, license in India. Between aminoglycosides and cyclopeptide, because we also say for Caprio, it is there, cyclopeptides. It is, again, a lot has to be said. The resistance between are overlapping. Why? Because both are RRS. And that's why I had highlighted the RRS. That is what it is detecting in the second line kit. The RRS only, nothing else, only the RRS. And since the RRS is overlapping between the cyclo and the amino, we say, yes, it is resistant even to that. But they have shown, in a small study, of course, that cross-resistance and MIC may vary between the different mutation pattern, okay? So that you have to do, okay, we cannot. If it is resistance to Caprio, usually it is susceptible to Cana and this. And therefore, when we say you need, and therefore clinician, though you may give XDR, we immediately follow it with a phenotypic and the entire spectrum of the DST to him. Because though they both have RRS, but what they have shown, resistance to Caprio may be susceptible to Cana and amikacin. Resistance to amikacin is essentially always also resistance to the other two. Okay? Resistance to CANA may have different level of cross-resistance. So if I say RRS, it's not that all aminoglycosides are going to be resistant. Okay, that is what I'm trying to say over here. Yeah, and last 2 slides only, which is over there. Okay, so though it is leapfrogging, mutation per se, like I said, may not be with the phenotypic this is there. You need to correlate it, and we cannot use any of these tests for follow-up. For follow-up, it has to be only a culture, because you have to know whether it's alive, because dead bacilli also will give me over there. Okay, you need to have a molecular test, goes without saying. There are definite benefits of the molecular test, which I will not, but I will definitely say, but there are definite limitations. What I wanted to understand is something which is called as discordance, because there is the reports of one lab, they will say it's right, the other lab is right. We must understand there is going to be discordance between the phenotypic, that is the solids and liquids. There is going to be discordance between the molecular and the phenotypic, and between the molecular also there are going to be discordance. And this slide very clearly says, molecular beacons is what I have in the GeneXpert. It looks into the codons between 312 and 317. As opposed to the line probe, it covers a wider codon, right? It is from 258, so I'm getting additional in the this. And of course, if I do sequencing, I'm getting much more additional. So what is the platform you are going to do that is going to decide over here? So there is a paradigm shift. We all know it's no longer microscopy only, no longer culture and DST only. It is a combination of all that you need to take, right? If you give me, and I have all the choice, I would like to do a smear. Positives, put it up for my line probe. Negative, put it up for my GeneXpert. Aliquot, and put it up into one liquid culture. Liquid because faster. If you don't have, even solid will do, but liquid culture, so that I don't miss out in whatever I have mentioned out over here. So this gives the various tests and the ease or the, what you say, turnaround time of the various tests. Though there may be some which have got a larger turnaround time, they yet have utility, of which culture is the largest we can say, which is got over there. Not one can replace the other. You need to take all of them, because each patient is unique in itself. Okay, so that's my last slide. That is my lab, like I said. We do all the methodologies that we have spoken out over here, and it is an NABL, and also a site for second-line DST. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Amita. Is there a simple thumb rule between GeneXpert and LPA? Is there that in which indication should we use LPA and which indication?
Yeah, see, there are clear-cut indications for GeneXpert, which has been set for paucibacillary, that is for HIV patients, for pediatric, for extrapulmonary. Put it. Okay? For the remaining, do a smear. Maximum half an hour you have to wait. If positive, preferably do a line probe. If negative, put it into the GeneXpert. That's all is the simplest algorithm I can think about. In other words, because the reason I'm saying the sample gets lost in the GeneXpert, you know, unless you can do, that means you need to have processing, BSL2 facility, process it out and keep, and then one aliquot you put it into your GeneXpert. That's it.
Thank you very much. Please.
What I wanted to ask was, what is your experience with extrapulmonary specimens for line probe?
We did 100 by all three, and not good experience in the sense I don't have the exact data over here, but like I said, though the kit, and I was told they are coming up with the kit for extrapulmonary. Because if you actually go by the kit literature, it states it's for pulmonary. And so we don't. No, we used to, even at that time, we used to put it up for liquid, and from culture we used to do.
No, we used to do it directly from the tissue because we are a standalone lab. And we used to get good results even when it was not validated. And we still do extrapulmonary on line progresses if it is smear positive strong, like I have a pus 3 plus.
See, like I said, the correlation is good for only certain samples. Those samples, I will prefer to do faster with Gene Expert, now which we have. The same samples hold true for your line probe assay. That is your CSF. Though CSF is not, but lymph nodes, aspirates, yes, good loads.
In fact, we have somebody from the company, maybe you can add some value to it. Bhupendra? The role of LPA in extrapulmonary, what is...
They say no.
No, they will say use it. No, see, they say use it, but the literature does not say. You know, then it becomes, see, when you're giving a report which is sensitive, it's okay. But the minute you give resistant and you have some other test coming up which says sensitive, then the patient sits on you. But something, and then it will come down to actually the proof. Then they will say, kit is not saying, then why did you do it? I think to safeguard yourself, you need to. I know, that's what I'm saying.
That's
They say no.
I'm not getting results. The first question is what was
No, they say no. No, but I was told a kit is coming up.
Have we been told for quite some time?
For a long time.
Long time. Thank you so much. Request Dr. Shah to please felicitate our speaker. Dr. Lakshmi Shah, please. A big hand, please. Thank you.
That's what James said.
Thank you.